Cyril Ramaphosa is again set to depart today for the United States, where he will meet with US President Donald Trump on what would seem to be a long overdue engagement. You know the facts. You know essentially what the essence of this is. But what's going to be the most important part of this discussion and this meeting? We've had the poll that we, of course, put forward to you just before we kicked off this morning on Newzroom AM, on AM Weekend Report, that is. So what do we think is going to be primary? What's top of mind? What's the first thing you do? And could it go from bad to worse from here? Let's talk to Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, international relations expert, on this visit. Why don't we then? Dr. Makhubela, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it then. Could this be a diplomatic difficulty that President Cyril Ramaphosa may not be able to handle?
Good morning, Arabile. The visit to the White House will be one of the most daunting challenges of President Ramaphosa because it would set the tone either way. It may go very well. It may be a very difficult visit. But for the visit to succeed, Arabile, there are certain preparations, in my own view, that ought to be done, and sensitivities that must be addressed beforehand. Looking at previous visits by other heads of state or heads of government to the White House, the president should avoid, when he arrives in Washington, to meet anyone who is an opponent of President Trump. The temptation will be there to say, let's give you a brief how to deal with the man. He should avoid to do that. We've seen in the past people who have done that. Zelensky, or what I call the Zelensky syndrome, included consultation with people who are ardent political enemies of Donald Trump, given the polarization of the body politics in the United States. So Trump takes an umbrage in that kind of an approach, and that's what soured the meeting in the White House. So Ramaphosa should avoid that. Netanyahu made the same mistake, had a meeting with Mike Waltz before having a meeting with Donald Trump, and he couldn't achieve his desired result. So Ramaphosa should first have a meeting with Donald Trump, and he can then meet other stakeholders later on as part of the preparations. But it will also require Ramaphosa to clearly define what is the strategic thrust of the visit. In my own view, he shouldn't go and discuss AGOA, discuss basic economic interaction at the White House. He should discuss restarting of the relationship, and all other related issues would fall in.
Yeah, so this becomes a political hot potato in any which way you look at it. And as you said, you look at some of the leaders that have been in place recently. One of the easiest example that I possibly have, you've made note of two. I'm going to bring in another one, that's Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. Having come in, Donald Trump said he wanted to actually take Canada and make it the 51st state of the United States. And Mark Carney was firm, but at the same time, his demeanor was not aggressive, did not sort of fight back. Is that going to have to be a thing to kind of not necessarily cower, but really appreciate, but also make sure that your stance is seen as firm in particular elements too? Do we even have that bargaining chip as South Africa?
Arabile, it comes to one fundamental issue, the strategic thrust of the visit. And using Mark Carney's example, he was able to articulate the views of Canada without being very confrontational.
Yeah.
The tendency, of course, is to have the pre-substantive meeting, press conference, and then raise controversial issues at that press conference. Mark Carney was able to turn around the situation to his favor and spoke about the grandeur of the Oval Office and that the Oval Office is not up for sale. And he raised the Canada issue in that context to say, I've had a mandate from the owners of Canada, and they've made it quite clear that Canada is not for sale. And he was, in a way, rebuffing Donald Trump's assertion that Canada should become the 51st state of the United States in a very subtle, but in a very diplomatic way.
Yeah.
And he was able to really articulate that, and that captured hearts and mind of everyone. The tendency, of course, that a lot of heads of state would do is to try to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and react to the media provocation, because the media is going to raise questions.
Yes.
But I think our president should then say, when the issues are raised, say there are bad things, there's genocide in South Africa, the president should say, listen, those are issues that we're going to discuss in a closed meeting. And coming out of the closed meeting, I'm quite confident that myself and Donald Trump will find each other on this matter and would have a clear understanding of the way forward without going into the details, without challenging the man, because he's going to marshal all his lieutenants next to him, and anything that is seen to be humiliating to him, they will challenge it.
Yeah, and I suppose you could use the Nampo harvest days that have just passed as a clear vindication of the kind of conversations he's had with those that may have claimed to have been persecuted, farmers that, of course, have had clear concerns around elements of crime in and around their area, and say, well, I've spoken to them. This is their cry. This is what we plan to do. This may be different. Do you think that would be an appeal to the president as well?
Well, I think, Arabile, what would be a success in my own view about this meeting is to turn around that narrative that Afrikaners are being targeted. And he must reserve that for the closed session, not raise it in that substantive discussion, press conference meeting. Raise it in the closed session, this narrative that people are being killed and so on, and really indicate to him that South Africa, like any other country, is facing serious problem of violent crime that is happening across the board. There's no targeting of a particular group. These ones are seen to be targeted because they possess what criminals want to take away from them. And articulate that and say, we'd like to work with you to deal with question of crime, not only domestic crime, because some of these issues have an element of transnational criminal activities, and we'd like to work with you. And at the end of the meeting, if Donald Trump can come out and say, well, we've committed to help South Africa combat crime, would put at our disposal our law enforcement capacity building to assist the South African. We understand this is a general crime that is happening even here in the US. That would be a big success. Yeah. And it will provide face saving to him. But to really try to rebut and discuss the Convention on Genocide, what it means in that pre-substantive discussion meeting, in my own view, Arabile, would be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I want to get to what would successes be exactly, but I also remember that if he's leaving today, his meeting with President Donald Trump is only on the 21st. Earlier on, you made note of the people he should be meeting in between who should not be in opposition to Donald Trump. So would it be right for him to meet the CPACs of the world, to meet possibly even Elon Musk, who, yes, has taken a bit of a backseat now, but still somebody who still has the ear possibly of the president?
I don't think that would be an advisable thing in my own view. And I'm using what we've seen with the other heads of state. The president should avoid meeting anyone outside the close circuit of President Trump, because the body politics in the United States is so polarized. Yeah. Even within the Republican is so polarized. So if Ramaphosa is to meet anyone who's seen to be an opponent of Trump, Trump is going to take an umbrage. Whatever Ramaphosa raises in the meeting, he's going to think that he has been influenced by these individuals. So he should avoid it. The other thing that he should avoid, I think there will be provocation by the media to Ramaphosa about the genocide against Israel. He should reserve that discussion for the closed session, because there are good things that have come out in the recent past. For instance, there's a group of 550 senior Israel officials that included Israel Ziv, who was in charge of the operation in Israel, who are really opposed to this question of war, who are opposed to the direction that Netanyahu is taking, including the former Prime Minister Olmert, who's opposed to this. And they are saying that this conflict must be resolved between the Palestinians, and that the annexation of more land, they are opposed to it. So he can use that. They are opposed to the question of hunger as a weapon of war. So he can use that in the closer session to say, listen, there are conventions, including the responsibility to protect, that we've obliged to take the matter to the ICJ. And he can raise those issues in the closed session and become very robust and provided facts. But he has information now about the discontent that is building within Israel, even within the European. But he must be very careful, the European issues, to play it too hard, because there are divisions, between the Europeans and the Americans.
Yeah. Look, he should probably, there might even be a sense of delving away from things that may not necessarily benefit him. What does success then look like? Does he have to win on all of these accounts? Or if he wins on a few at the very least, then he's accounted for the greatest success? And which of those is the most important? Is it going to be those tensions politically? Or is it going to be the likes of AGOA and those other aspects of trade?
I think he should stay away from AGOA, because AGOA will be a lacuna in this meeting, in my own view, because AGOA provide concession to South African products to the US. So he should stay out of it. He should discuss strategic political issues. If he resolve and reset the relations, issues related to AGOA would fall in. Because Trump can come back and say to Ramaphosa, I'm not going to discuss AGOA. It's a responsibility of the Capitol Hill. They are the ones who are supposed to review this year, and they will make recommendations to me, and I don't want to prejudge that. He may dismiss this in this manner, and that will create a bit of a problem for the president. But once he has discussed substantive issues of how to reset the relationship between the two countries, all the related issues will fall in.
Do you think G20 falls into that as well? Seeing President Donald Trump coming to the G20 summit in November would be a great success.
I think he should give the man success, because within the G20 agenda, there's a question of the resolution of conflicts, and indicate that President Trump has set his agenda on being a peacemaker. That's his legacy. And say, listen, it will be unfortunate if you are not there when we are discussing these global challenges. And really shower praises for him, where he has done well to bring tension between India and Pakistan, and his endeavors in bringing peace in Ukraine, and also in the Middle East. And say, it will be unfortunate if you are not there when these issues are discussed at the G20, and your voice will be very fundamental in terms of the resolution of this conflict. And really emphasize that to him. I think play on his softer parts and his ambition to be a peacemaker, to appeal to him to be a constructive player in the resolution of some of these challenges. I think he would succeed if he were to do that, instead of being confrontational, because I had the clips earlier on from some of the viewers that you spoke to, Arabile, who are of the view that President should go toe-to-toe and should go and show the strength of South Africa. It doesn't work like that in diplomacy.
Here's my question that I'll then pose, if maybe on the side of those that say we should show our strength in some way. Is this not the whole world in some way cowering to this one man? Yes, who holds a significant office, who holds the most important office in the world, of course. But what has happened is that diplomacy now feels as though it needs to appease itself to one man. And it's no longer just diplomatic, but it's actually allowing one man to rule and decide and dictate terms. Is that not something we could fear?
Diplomacy is the ability to convince people to side with you. It's to convince people to buy into your issues. If really Ramaphosa wanted to be confrontational, he would have been better advised to stay home and being confrontational from his secure turf here. But to go into Trump's turf and think you'll be confrontational, it would not work. We've seen different meetings that Trump has had. Some of this meeting have been very successful because of the strategic approach. The thrust of this meeting is to reset the relationship. It's not to be confrontational. And that's where the focus should be. Do we have the capability and the ability to be confrontational with the United States? I think it would be suicidal to do that. It would be better to look at the softer part of changing things and stick to that. The strength of South Africa, it's not on military. It's not the economy in terms of versus the United States. It's a softer part of diplomacy that South Africa should use.
Well, the political and diplomatic wits of President Cyril Ramaphosa and his team will certainly be tested to the maximum, it seems then, with regards to this visit. Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it this morning.
Thank you very much, Ravi.
Always great getting your views and your thoughts then